Welcome back to Sandy's Paddling Podcast. In this episode, I'll be talking with Chris Issendorf about Triple Crown racing in North America, and also he'll give a brief description, or will attempt to, of who Serge Corbin and Jeff Kolka are to marathon canoe. I've done a little bit of research, but I've never been to Michigan or Canada. Can you give a little bit of background on what the Triple Crown race is and what racing is like up there? Like, for someone who doesn't know anything about the Triple Crown, how would you describe it?
Sometimes I feel like I'm drag racing a canoe for 10 hours straight, right? The Triple Crown of canoe racing starts with the General Clinton Canoe Regatta in New York. Actually starts in Cooperstown, where the Baseball Hall of Fame is. Race starts on a big lake. You start kind of out in the middle of the lake. Everybody lines up, cannon goes off, and you race for a river, and then you do 70 miles on a river. That's the first leg of the Triple Crown.
And that's nonstop.
It's nonstop, 70 miles. The pro event. So that's just the pro event. The General Clinton Canoe Regatta actually has like 25 races in total over the course of a week, I believe. I've never done any of the other races, but I've seen a lot of the races.
Is it kind of a festival atmosphere? Or?
Yes, it's a festival atmosphere, and it's happening all along the river, all 70 miles of the river that we race on. There's like little races going on while we're doing the pro race even. And so that's the first leg of the Triple Crown. The second leg of the Triple Crown is the Ausable River Canoe Marathon. And it's 120 miles nonstop, starts at 9 o'clock at night. It's in northern Michigan. Like, the weather is amazing. You know, typical race night is like 50, 55 degrees. Its stars are all out. The moon's out. Like, 100 teams line up on a street a quarter mile away from the river.
And it's the only one with the Le Mans start, right? Where you have to run with your boat.
It's the only one that starts with a Le Mans start, yes. Yeah, and so, for me, I normally start pretty far up in the lines, and I think it's less than a quarter mile, but maybe more than an eighth of a mile to the river. So
it's a long way to run with a C2.
It's a pretty good long ways, and it's rows of 5 boats on the street, and then they're 40 feet apart from each other. And so you can imagine 100 canoes, there's 20 rows. The folks starting in the back are literally going twice the distance.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And so if you're a good runner and not a great canoeer, you can pass a lot of teams in the beginning, And
I didn't realize that race started in 1947. I knew it was older than the Safari. Yeah. That's old.
It's old. And it's been run several different ways. It's been run as a stage race before. It's been run during the day. It's been run at night as a stage race, I believe. But then at some point, they decided to leave it just a nonstop event and keep it to Saturday night. It's the last Saturday in July every year. Yeah. And so that race, I would say, is... it's really intense, and it'll put you to the test. Like, there's shallow water, there's sharp corners, there's fast water, there's deep water, there's a lot of suck water, there's a lot of ponds. There's sometimes you run the canoe straight into these huge flats of weeds where you're constantly clearing the bow, but you go through the weeds because it might be 20 seconds shorter than going around, even though you come out the other side looking like a swamp monster. And so there's pack riding. Sometimes you're by yourself and there's a team a minute behind you and a team a minute ahead of you, and it stays that way for hours.
So
other times you're never on your own.
Like on the big lakes, because there's several big dams that you have to portage.
Yeah.
Pretty substantial portages.
They are.
Can you see a fair ways ahead of you in those lakes to see people ahead of you or behind you, or?
Oh yeah. When the sun comes up, there's a couple lakes, like Cook Pond and Foot Pond. You can see a mile ahead or more sometimes. On Foot Pond, you could probably see a couple miles ahead, but you can't always see a canoe team if they're a mile ahead, right? It's got to be a pretty clear day to see them up there.
Yeah. Do people run with lights off in those, or?
Yeah.
Got to go stealth mode.
If you know the river, yes. Like last year I raced, I think we only used our light for 20 minutes maybe at night. And the rest of the time
even
we
when
were
you
stealth.
were in the current section.
Yeah. But I was with Bill Taranjo, and he's done the race like 39 times.
I do remember my dad saying something about, like the river doesn't change that much in terms of logs and things like that. Like obstacles that are there every year, and it's not like brand new items every month that you train. So you're able to kind of memorize where everything is ahead of time. Absolutely.
A flood there raises the river like 6 inches.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. There's, I started racing here in Texas, and so I'm used to what happens on the San Marcos River. We get a flood, the river rises 10 feet, everything changes, new trees, any docks that were on the river are now gone.
Yeah, the rapids will change, the rocks will move.
Boulders move. The first time I went up to northern Michigan to do that race, we were paddling on the river, and there was an old, like rickety old dock, like couldn't have been more than 2 feet above the water. And it had this old clay pot, like a flower pot, that had fallen over and broken up into pieces. And you could tell it broke up into pieces like 20 years ago, but all the dirt is still there, and there's flowers growing out of the dirt. And, I asked my partner, like, dude, does the river never gets up high enough to wash that out? And he's like, no, it never does. And there's like boat docks that you can, like boat houses, like a garage. They have these really cool fishing boats there that are like 25 feet long, really, really narrow, and they pole them on the river. They don't paddle them. They push pole them, and they use those to fly fish out of at night. They're like guide boats. And there's several houses on the river that have boat houses at the water level. And these are rickety old barnwood boat houses that are at water level that are fine, and they look like they've been there for 50 years. Yeah, that
wouldn't last in Texas.
No,
get washed away.
It'd be gone after an inch of rain. Right. Yeah. So that's the second leg.
Now, which of the three races has the most spectators? Would you say the Ensemble is the biggest?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's thousands of people.
Right.
Yeah, especially like at the start and like the first couple hours of the race. You go under some bridges, and there's so many spectators cheering that you cannot hear your partner call switches. Like they could scream them as loud as they want, and sometimes you won't be able to hear them.
Wow.
And you're only 12 feet away,
right.
So it's pretty intense. And unlike here in Texas, where sometimes you'll paddle for hours and hours without hearing another human's voice, is very different there.
Yeah, I saw where they put like LED or glow sticks to make the boat number in like a notebook or something to hold up for the team captains for the team to be able to spot which ones. Because I would think that is a madhouse, because you've got all these feeders in the water, and you have to find the right one for a very quick exchange.
And it's a really fast exchange. A lot of times, like, you don't even... Like, I try not to let the boat come off a plane, right? Yeah. Like, you want to keep it on that high glide just for the whole race if you can. And, like, every time it comes off that high glide, you got to get it back up there again. And so, like, you're coming in as fast as possible. And, yeah, if they weren't wearing neon cowboy hats or holding up... Literally, my feeder a couple years ago had like a 3-foot tall illuminated snowman on top of her head.
Oh my gosh.
That's how we could tell. And like, you can't miss that. It's a giant, like something you'd see in someone's front yard at Christmas time.
There are approximately 100 teams, like you said.
About 100 teams. The cutoff is 19 hours. You have 19 hours to finish. You got to know what you're doing to make the cutoffs, or you need to like have country strength and just, never slow down. It's a fast paced race, which all of the Triple Crown races are. They're, you're using 3x27 pro boats, which means that the boat is 27 inches wide at the 3-inch water line at some point on the boat. It also has to be in a certain section of the boat. I think there's like that 27-inch width has to be within 16 inches of the center of the boat. So 8 inches either way of the center.
Right.
And so basically all the canoes are the same. And then pretty much everybody's using the same paddles, right? Most people use a ZRE paddle. I do too. And so it's really just... It comes down to physical prowess and technique and river knowledge. Yeah. In all pro boat racing, that's a big part, because those boats require a lot of time and training to learn how to make them glide and learn how to not slow them down, right? And so the ensemble is probably the hardest one because it's the longest, right? It's, it takes anywhere from 14 to 19 hours to finish, and you're working hard the whole time. Because if you slow down even for a second, a team is going to pass you. Right. They are right there. It doesn't matter if you're in 5th place or 50th place, like someone wants your position. And that's what makes it fun. Yeah. It's just really competitive, and that's what draws me to it. Yeah. So the third and final race of the Triple Crown is the La Classique de Canoe.
I was going to ask how you...
Yeah, La Classique de Canoe. And that's up in Quebec. I don't know the name of the river that it's on, but it's a big-ass river. It's not like any of the other rivers. It's really big. It has a lot of current. There can be a lot of wind. Typically, it's not windy every day, but I think it's pretty normal to have at least one really windy day. It is a stage race. It's 3 days. Each day is... No, I take it back. The last day is about 3.5 hours for the winning team. The first day is 5 to 6 hours, and the second day is maybe 6 to 7 hours. And there are several portages in that race. One of them is a full kilometer long.
Wow.
Yeah. And like, if you think you're going to crush it because you're a good runner, yeah, no. You're pretty tired when you get there. And then you get to the bottom of the portage, and it's about a quarter mile straight up the steepest boat ramp you've ever seen. And like, yeah, then you get to the top, and it's like a gradual descent all the way to the river on an asphalt road. And so, weird. Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of waves there, right? So
is there much boat traffic?
There is boat traffic, and they come out to watch the canoe race in their giant yachts.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think they enjoy throwing big waves at the racers. Yeah.
That's not good.
So I did that race one time with Ian Rawls, and we trained all year, right? And we trained in some rough water, but only what we had available to us here in Central Texas. So it's not like, we weren't taking the probe out into the Gulf of Mexico, right. But in hindsight, we probably should have, because, on the second day, I bet we were 5 minutes behind the leaders at one point on this giant lake. And there was like 20 boats, motorboats following the lead team.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And
do they make a wake that the lead team can ride type of thing? Or
no, they can't do that. They have to stay slightly behind. And
but it sure threw up a terrible
it throws off a washing machine for everyone behind. I bet there's a couple teams in there that can ride those waves, right, if they're close enough. But where we were at, it was awful. The wind is blowing and it's coming in sideways, and you're out in the middle of this giant lake, a half a mile from shore. And
did you have a spray cover, or did?
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
I would think you would just sink right away.
The third day is where the spray cover really comes in handy. And the third day, it's only 3.5 hours. And it seems like unless you have something to gain, everyone's pretty happy with their position at that point, because, it's pretty much set by that point, unless you just had like a really bad first day or second day, and now you're feeling really good and you can make up ground. But I think you do one portage, really steep downhill. And if it's raining, it's like ice skating downhill. I still have scars on my hands from scraping through the gravel there. Not really, but you go across a big lake, and then you do another portage. And at the bottom of that portage is a set of rapids. It's below a dam. It's a huge dam. The dam is like hundreds of feet tall. And there's got to be 15,000 CFS coming out the bottom of this dam.
Wow.
When I raced anyways. I'm sure it's not always that way.
Yeah.
But they get a lot of rain up there. And so anyways, let's say the river is 200 yards wide. It's standing waves everywhere. There is nowhere you can go that's not like 2 or 3 foot tall standing waves. And so I remember jumping into the boat, and I didn't have the zipper done on the spray skirt, and we had to make this real funky maneuver to get around some rocks that were there to get out into the current before the current shoved us up against the rocks. And as soon as we did, we're going 12 miles an hour, and I didn't zip the skirt yet, and the waves are coming fast, and it's and the boat's real tippy, and if I stop paddling, and it's we had to do it. And I'll tell you a funny story. So Ian Rolls and I, this is our last race of the season, right? Together. We did the Clinton, we did the Water Safari, we did the Au Sable, and now we're doing this race.
Because this race is in September?
It's in September, yeah. And we got up there and we borrowed a boat from Christophe Prue. Thanks, Chris. It was awesome. And it's a 95 Corbin, and all the people who were beating us that year were racing 95 Corbins. And so we're all right, now we got the boat. Now we're going to be able to hang, Well, it was set up for somebody who's used to paddling a 95 Corbin, and they weigh 150 pounds, and I'm 195 pounds, 6'3", really tall. I carry most of my weight up top in my shoulders, and so I climb in this boat, and the seat is 9 inches off the floor, I'm pretty sure.
That's a pretty tippy boat to begin with, right?
It's a really tippy boat. And so we struggled on the first day. It was really windy, really choppy, and so we struggled. We end up finishing the first day in 13th place, I think. And literally, we both contemplated dropping out. It was that bad. Of course, we never said it to each other, but kind of after the race, I was dude, I was even thinking. And he's so was I. And
it's two more days of this.
Yeah. Well, no, we got back. I called Chris and, hey, man, you mind if I adjust these seats? He said, do whatever you need to do. You need to drill holes. I don't care. Just do whatever. Make it good for you. Guy's awesome. So we dropped the seats, and we have a better second day. I think maybe we finished in 11th place. And so on the third day, like I said, people are kind of complacent with where they're at now. And so we get in this huge, we call it the international pack. I want to say that Trevor Robinson is the one who pointed out, like, this is an international pack because Amato was there, Amato Cruz from Belize. Yeah. And then you got guys from Saskatchewan and then us from Texas and, you know, people from all over. And it was like, we're like a 10 pack, like 10 boats in this pack. Well, we're getting kind of close to that dam where the rapids are at the bottom. And I could tell that we are faster than everybody else. Everybody's just drafting us. And I feel Ian starting to feel like he wants to go. And so we light it up and we make a move. And I don't know, we're 2 miles from this portage. So it's like, well, let's bust it and see if we can break contact with this pack. And Mike and Rebecca Davis were up ahead of us. We could see them about a minute and a half up. And the plan was to bridge the gap to them.
They'd be a good team to draft.
They'd be a good team to draft and then, you know, race them for the rest of the race. And so we make this big move. We sell out. We get to the dam. We probably put 45 seconds on the pack, right? Dropped them all. We haul ass over the dam, down the portage. I mean, get to the bottom, just gasping for air, right? And this is when I had to like stop paddling to zip up the spray skirt, you know? Well, we had never been there. We didn't have enough time to go scout that section. Definitely should have. If there's any section we should have scouted, it would have been that one, in hindsight. And so we get down there and here's this huge river, 3-foot waves everywhere, like everywhere you look. And Ian's yelling to me like, where do you want to go? And I can't see Mike and Rebecca. They're somewhere in the washing machine out there. And I look ahead and the river kind of bends to the left and then comes back right and then makes kind of a hard turn to the left. And I see a lot of water getting pushed over there. And it's like, let's go left. And okay, we commit to going left. And man, we get over there and I'm like taking waves to the chest. And like, he's got the bailer down, but I could feel the water sloshing around at my feet, right? And I don't know that we were even paddling faster than the current was going. And pretty good chance water's not even coming out of the boat. And so anyways, we're pounding through these waves, flying down the river, and I look over to the right, and that whole pack of boats that we worked so hard to get away from is just cruising up the right-hand side, blowing by us. and so we get through it. We almost swamp, but we get out the other side without flipping the boat, and then get the water out and work our asses off to get back up to that pack. And we kind of pull back up and they all look at us like, hey, nice move, guys.
Hey, rookie, did you have fun on the left side? Yeah. Oh, man.
How was it over there, guys? I want to say somebody said, hey, you could have asked me and I would have told you to go right, you know? Oh, yeah, thanks. Gee.
Yeah.
So, and then that race finishes at the St. Lawrence waterway, like massive river. And don't drink the water. So on that third day, I was so dehydrated just from racing hard for 2 days prior. And then that day racing really hard. Like I thought it was only 3.5 hours. We don't need a handoff. All I need is 2 liters of water. Well, that wasn't enough. And then we got below those rapids and I was just so thirsty. I started drinking the water out of the river because it didn't look that bad.
Well, it's cold, right?
It's cold and it's kind of clear. And like, I've drank worse, right. To be honest. Like I've drank some bad water. Well, it might have looked clean, but like where I was drinking it, you know, I was drinking mouthfuls of this water and then it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. We make a right-hand turn and there's a tanker ship going by. And I was like, oh no, that's bad. Well, I got Giardia.
Oh no.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So
good thing you were on the third day of this.
It's a good thing the race was
last
over.
day.
Yes. It's a good thing the race was over because there was no way that I could have done any more racing after that.
That's not a fun end to your race.
No,
really.
No.
We finished and now I'm horribly ill.
I still don't even know how I made it home. Like I had to take 3 planes to get home and I was solo by myself. Ian and Brooke were on a different flight and like I was passing out and, you know, I don't know how high my fever was. I have no idea. And luckily none of the planes were completely full. And so all 3 planes of stewardesses got me positioned really close to the bathroom, which was important. And somehow I made it home.
It's good this was pre-COVID, because they probably would have escorted you.
Oh my God. They would have kicked me to the curb real quick.
Sir, can we check your temperature?
Yeah. Oh my God, this guy is COVID.
Something's wrong with this one.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And so that's the Triple Crown.
Now, it's a huge, you start in a big river, so you probably don't have to have any starting positions really for the Classique like you do the ensemble.
You don't. And in fact, they stretch a big rope across the river, it's tied off to a buoy on both ends. And then the sternman has to hold the rope, because you're sitting in fast current where you start on the first and second day. On the third day, I don't think we had to hold the rope. I think we were kind of in a big back eddy of a pond. There wasn't any current there, but the first 2 days, the stern is holding a rope. Yeah. So really, really neat.
Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're going to go and try and do the Classique, make sure you work on your portaging. You need to know how to run with a canoe on your shoulder. That's a big part of racing up there. Same for the ensemble, but more so for the Classique. There's several really long portages. There's one that's really cool. On the second day, you're in downtown Shawinigan, which is the big town up there. And it's this beautiful historic town. And you finish in Shawinigan at the end of the second day. And so you kind of paddle your guts out to get down there. And then you got to jump out on the boulevard and run right down the main street of town with thousands of people cheering.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah. It's a big deal there. But that's kind of the only place you really get spectators at the Classique, because it's such a big river, You're just kind of out in the middle of the river. There's people up on the bank cheering, but you can't even...
Well, you're so far away from them.
Yeah, you can't even hear what they're saying, really.
Yeah. Does the finish line, is it in a park, or where's the finish line?
The finish line is in a park. And they do a really good job with this race. When we went anyways in 2018, it was really well funded. They had a huge stage, a concert stage set up with a Jumbotron, and made a big deal of it. They had all these big giant trophies, and it was a big deal. It's really cool. And I will say that if you ever want to try and go do that race, they are the most welcoming people that I've found in the canoe racing community. They are so excited for us to go up there and race. I called the race director a couple months ahead of time just to say, hey, from Texas, we're coming to race. Where should we sleep? Right. What town should we sleep? And he said, oh, if you're a racer, we'll take care of you. Don't worry, we'll get you a place to stay. And I'm like, nah, you don't have to do that, man. Just tell me where I should get a hotel. What's the best town? And he said, don't worry about it. I'm going to take care of it.
Wow.
He called me a week later and said, I got you accommodations. Do you need a boat or paddles? What do you need, feeders? And I said, no, we got all that covered already, but I really appreciate it. He was ready to let me use his C2, right? And so we get up there, and I don't know where he's going to put us. I just assume we're going to be sleeping in somebody's basement or something.
Wait, here's a couch.
He gave us a cabin in the woods on a private pond. The cabin, I don't know whose it was. It must be someone in the racing community or somebody who wanted to sponsor the race in some way. This badass 2-bedroom cabin, in the most beautiful place in the country. And they even set buoys out behind the house for us to practice buoy turns on, because there's a lot of buoy turns there.
Really?
Yeah, there's probably a good 10 buoy turns.
What do you buoy turn at?
Several parade laps. That's the only way, because the river's so big, they'll set up a little parade lap buoy turn, a double buoy turn.
At the finish of the days, or?
One's at the finish of the day, yes. On the first day, when the race starts, you actually start going downstream. And then you do a buoy turn and go back upstream where you kind of hug the shore. And they set these buoys up where they're really close to shore so that the race runs along the bank so spectators can watch and cheer.
Yeah.
And then you go upstream to a buoy, turn a buoy, and then haul ass back downstream. And then somewhere about midday on that first day, they do the same thing again. Yeah, you have to kind of paddle all the way over to shore, turn a buoy, go back upstream
Is that something that you can see, or do you have to like know specifically at this mile we have to make sure we're paying attention?
They gave us a booklet, a race guide booklet. They did a great job with it, like really, really detailed, like Google images with tracks to show you exactly what you're supposed to do, right? Okay. Yes.
Because I'd be real worried about missing one of those parade buoys and blowing right past it. And then
it wasn't hard for us because we could always see someone in front of us.
Okay.
We would just follow the boat in front of us.
Yeah.
I could see how it would be really confusing.
If you're by yourself.
If you're by yourself, or if you're leading the race and you've like never been there before, like I've heard stories about people missing buoys, like the people who were in the lead missing buoys.
Right.
I want to say 2 years ago, Steve Lejoie and Wes Dean got penalized 2 minutes because they did something wrong at a buoy. Yeah, they missed a buoy turn. They're huge buoys, like really big, inflated, giant things.
But it's a big river.
It's a big river, and you're coming down, and you kind of see them over there, right? And like there might be 3 or 4 of them, and you have to do a certain thing around each buoy. And like, yeah, if there's no one in front of you, kind of, and what's to say that they're doing it the right way?
Right.
And so
you just gotta hope they're turning the correct direction.
So for Ian and I, it's just like, we're just gonna do what they do, you know.
We may all get a 2-minute penalty here, but we're all in the same.
At least we all got the same 2-minute penalty, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, you got to practice buoy turns. Buoy turns are important in all pro boat racing. A lot of the big races have a buoy turn of some sort. Even the ensemble. The ensemble goes downstream for the whole race. But there are sprints for starting positions on the road. And that sprint is on a tiny little creek. You know, it's not even a river, it's a stream.
It's more like a shoveling competition in the picture or the videos I've seen.
It does.
Like, the paddles.
I always do really well there because I'm really good at poling, right? I can just use my paddle like I'm in a gondola, you know?
Yeah.
I just push that thing along.
Do you bring a special paddle just for the sprints?
You got to have a strong paddle for the sprints. Yeah, you want to be really confident in your paddle. Yeah. I have Jeff Glock make me sprint paddles.
Oh.
So he made me one several years ago. I handed him a brand new paddle and said, hey, I want you to make this thing bomb-proof. And so it's been bomb-proof, although it's completely wore out now. I need to use a new one this year. So hopefully it works out.
Yeah, hopefully it gets you a good position.
Yeah.
Is there a buoy turn at the General Clinton?
No buoy turns General Clinton.
Okay.
There was, but that was before I started racing there.
Okay.
They got rid of it.
Everybody's kind of heard of the ensemble, but not everybody's, I've gotten to where I stay up a little bit too late at night. I'm like, it's 3 a.m. and I'm like, when's the next checkpoint update?
Yeah. What are they doing? What are they doing?
Listening to the radio. It's like, I got to go to bed now.
Sometimes I wish I could listen to the radio on my earbuds while I'm racing, because they talk about it all night long, right?
They do.
They're giving live updates as to what's going on, and after the race, people will be coming up to me going dude, I listened all night long. You guys had a great race, man. Good push, man. You guys were pushing out on Cook Pond. And it's like, really? They were talking about that? Oh man. Yeah, they were talking about that. Texas, go Texas.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It is cool. It is cool. And I'll give a shout out to my sponsor, 98.5.
Oh, I didn't know they were your sponsor. Oh, that's right. I've seen you wearing a shirt.
They have sponsored me several times, and that is the radio station that kind of does the best job covering the race.
Yeah, they do a great job.
They do a great job, and they pour a ton of money and support into the race, like beforehand, afterwards. Like, yeah, my boy Mike, he's awesome. So,
well, let's talk about the GOAT.
The GOAT
of really marathon paddling in the world, I would say. The best there ever has been and probably ever will be.
So Serge is still so good that at 68 years old, it doesn't matter what boat he goes in, it's still the fastest boat. Yeah. Serge and my wife were beating, I think it was me and Dodd one day. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'm like, you got to be shitting me. Like, he's got to get tired at some point.
He's still a little bit competitive.
Yes. Extremely competitive. Yeah.
So I didn't realize this because I didn't do we didn't know we were going to be podcasting until about 3 hours prior to the podcast.
Yeah.
So I hadn't had time to look all his stats up. But I didn't know he's raced the Classic 32 times.
Wow.
He's won 26 of those.
Wow. That's
he
incredible.
has almost like double the wins of anybody else at the Classic. And then he's raced the Ensemble 22 times, and he holds the record for individual victories with 18 wins out of his 22.
It's crazy.
And then he held the record for overall time with Solomon Carrier for 27 years at the Ensemble, which is nuts.
Yep.
And then he's done a ton of General Clintons, which is the General Clinton didn't start until 1963. So it's a much younger race, but he's raced that 32 times, and he's won 27 of those.
27, and I believe it was 27 in a row.
Right,
I'm pretty sure he won 27 in a row. So, like, yeah, anyone who's trying to come up and get to the top knows what they're up against, right? Like, that would be so hard.
I mean, it's really unbelievable because the level of competition is so high.
Yes.
To be able to dominate like that for that many decades. It's not even just a decade. Oh, he won for, I mean, Jeff Kolka, I think, gets overshadowed a bit by Serge in a way. Yeah. But Jeff has won. He raced the Classic 18 times, and he also raced the Ensemble 18 times, and the General Clinton 21 times. No kidding. To win the Ensemble 9 times is huge. Even, that's huge.
And the majority of, Jeff didn't win it until he got with Serge.
Right.
Like, he had 5 seconds in a row.
He was very close to winning it.
He was really close. Yeah. In 1993, him and Bill Taranjo almost won it. They broke all the point-to-point records, got a breakaway real early on, and just were going like a bat out of hell down the river, like paddling with reckless abandon, right? Like, we're giving it everything we got, and they held them off until like pretty late in the race. But then Serge came back. And I think it was him and Saul. I believe him and Saul came back and beat him, and then Serge and Saul set the record together in 94, and then in 95, maybe Serge and Jeff started racing together.
I think that's right.
Now, you have to understand, when you're Serge Corbin and you've put in the time and the training and the focus, and you're also, he's got to be somewhat naturally gifted, right?
Oh yeah.
Like some people are genetic mutations. Well, some people's mutation is a good mutation, right? Like Lance Armstrong, right? From birth, he could move more blood than you or I, right? I have to assume Serge is similar. But he also put in the time. Yeah, and the and dude
he had a good coach, like his older brother teaching him how to paddle. Yes. And then, I mean, they just dominated right off the bat. A 16-year-old
dominating.
Yeah.
And it was because he told me the first couple of years with his brother, they trained 600 hours a year.
That's unbelievable.
600. And that was like just skiing, running, and paddling, right? Skiing, running, and paddling. 600 hours. Like, I kind of keep track of my hours. I don't even get close to that.
To
like
600.
On a really good year, I might hit 400 hours, you know? And so when you're Serge, you've done all that, you kind of get your pick of partners, right? And so part of his dominance over the rest of the field was like, he always got the best guy to go with. He always got the best partner, right? He had his pick. And so it was like he could race with someone for a few years, and if they started to get tired or didn't want to do it anymore,
Lost
just
interest.
Yeah, they lose interest or families getting in the way, like he gets to pick the next best person out there. And so it definitely helps. When you get the best partner, it helps. It makes it easier to stay on top, right? Yeah. But you got to give the guy credit. Like, he stayed focused on it for how many years? 40 years, right? Like, extreme focus on one sport, on just dominating everybody else.
Yeah. And even on the years that he didn't win, he was typically real close to winning. You know, it wasn't like he was, I'm in the back of the pack. No, he was right there.
He's right there. Well, like, you look at those General Clinton wins 27 times in a row, right? He was definitely sick at some point.
What do you think? He had an off day.
He had an off day. He definitely had an injury one of those years, but he still managed to pull off a win. Like, and that's incredible, right? Like, that's perseverance. I mean, I've paddled a lot with the guy, and, you know, I got to do a race with him, which was amazing, you know, and it was, God, I was on cloud nine the whole time racing. I wish the conditions could have been a little better, like maybe a little more water in the river. The paddling was kind of hard, but that dude's capable of things that no one else I've ever paddled with can do, right? Just the way he manages the boat and just keeps the boat feeling light all the time and fast, and it's always in control, and like, there's no waste, right? He never wastes a stroke, ever. And so, like, and he doesn't waste in between the strokes. There's no wasted movements. There's no movement that he's making that isn't helping the boat go fast, right? It's all just to help the boat go faster. Really, really cool.
And what an honor to get to interview both of them. I mean, what are the odds?
Yeah.
In Texas.
In Texas, like.
If you told me a week beforehand, oh, by the way.
As far as I know, you're the only person who's gotten Serge on a podcast. I think Jeff might have done one or two, but yeah. And I'm going to tell you, I think if you were some dude, he probably would have said no. But you're like this sweet young lady with a Southern accent. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Let's do a podcast. Chris, you're going to be there, right? Yeah, sure.
That was very good. All right. Well, thank you very much. Oh, yeah. And thank you for droning on about racing in general.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Happy to. Paddlers like to talk about paddling.